Hey Johnny, welcome to the HMO podcast.
Hi Andy, thanks for having me on. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Johnny. Now, we obviously know each other really, really well because we do some work together. You're on my one-to-one program, and actually, we've got a lot in common, haven't we? Outside of the property industry as well. You like to surf, and so do I. You're into kind of outdoor sports, the mountains and stuff like that. Um, Now, for anyone who doesn't know you, though, Johnny, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, sure. My name's Johnny. I live in London with my partner Rosie and our dog Nigel. And since 2018, we've been investing in property alongside our day jobs. And in the last couple of years, we've really focused on student HMOs.
Yeah, and you're actually investing up in the northwest, aren't you, Johnny?
Yeah, exactly that. Our focus is on Liverpool, very specifically on a handful of streets in that area. 210 miles away from home, which brings its
Yeah.
challenges, as you can imagine.
And we're going to talk about some of those challenges today. And we're also going to talk about one of your case studies, which is available in the HMO roadmap for all of our listeners to go and check out as well. It's a great case study. And I want to talk about some of the ups and downs of the portfolio that you've built and the challenges that you faced and overcome in the process of doing that, because I think there's a huge amount of relatable stuff here for lots of our listeners who are trying to do what you've done as well. But let's start with kind of the stuff outside of property to begin with. You're the first stuntman we've had on the show, Johnny. You might be the last
Yeah.
stuntman as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background? And because that sounds so interesting and exciting. And I guess the obvious question is, why on earth would you want to start investing in HMOs? You've got a great job like a stuntman. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that started and how long you've been doing that?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I'm a stunt performer in film and television. I'm part of something called the British Stunt Register, which is an association of stunt professionals in film and TV in the UK and internationally. We do everything from EastEnders to Game of Thrones, from Holby City to Mission Impossible and James Bond, and the Marvel franchises and things like that. I've been in that for about 10 years now, and I've always been interested in property. It started sort of from quite a young age. My dad was forever doing home renovations, and he was forever extending our house. Actually, we just did they're selling their family home. We just did a collage of photographs, and in every picture over 30 years, there's a building project in the background, and he did it all himself. And I was always kind of like the labourer. I've always been interested in sort of home renovations and property. And when I bought my first home, I kind of renovated it. And sort of simultaneously at that time, my partner Rosie and I were kind of considering how we could supplement our income because of the nature of our jobs. We do contractual work, and the income sort of ebbs and flows. So we wanted a steady income stream on the side. So on those months where we're maybe not working, we get something coming in, and that's where we kind of started to look at property. And we started off with a single buy to let, and quickly realised that actually, if we want to get that monthly income, we're better at looking at an alternative form. And I kind of stumbled across HMOs really, and that's how it began.
And where are we at now, Johnny? How many HMOs? How many tenants?
So we are about to purchase our fifth project, and we have 20 tenants as of this September because we're in the student cycle. So yeah, as of this September, there'll be 20.
Yeah. Well, if you thought getting set on fire or doing backflips off cliffs and stuff was hard work, Johnny, just wait till you feel the pain of managing 20 student tenants. Okay, great. So actually, and what's the time frame there, Johnny? When did you buy the first one?
So we actually ended up purchasing two HMOs together that were both tenanted, and we bought them in 2019, so September 2019. So not that long ago, really.
No. So actually, you're buying the fifth at the minute.
Mm.
This has all happened pretty quickly, hasn't it? You've been moving at quite a pace. Although I think if you were honest, I know you'd probably say not quite quickly enough. You want to do this really quite quickly, don't you?
Yeah, I think I'm very guilty, as you always say, of sort of overestimating the short term and underestimating the long term. And obviously, property is a long term business, but yeah, I feel like I can always do more, um,
Yeah.
and that's just kind of my ambition, I suppose, within it, really.
So, five HMOs is already a decent number. It's certainly got the potential to generate a really substantial amount of income. And so it sounds like you're obviously well on the way to to building that portfolio and having that recurring income stream on the side. With the stunt performing, is that got an expiration date on it because of the nature of the work, or is it something that you actively want to work your way out of because it is challenging and demanding, or are you planning to continue that as long as you can?
Yeah, I think I started off with this sort of mindset of like replace the income, build a pension type idea, not knowing if I was going to be in stunts for the next sort of 30 years or the next 10 years. And I think as I've kind of got older, I'm physically it's becoming a little bit more demanding. I'm noticing when I'm sort of performing alongside younger guys and girls, it's a lot more challenging than it used to be. So yeah, I mean, I think I feel for property like an option of an exit strategy, and I think I will, probably lean that way. Um, but I, I'm not going to walk away from it tomorrow. This is kind of like a longer term plan for me, for sure.
Yeah. So why HMOs then, Johnny? Why not more buy to lets? You started with a buy to let. Why not more buy to lets?
Um, I just found we purchased a buy to let and we bought a property off plan and we struggled to get it tenanted. We eventually got it tenanted and the monthly income was very low, albeit you don't have to do a lot of work for that income. And I just wanted a strategy in which I felt I wanted to generate more income monthly. And when I looked around at different strategies, HMOs to me seemed like the sort of sensible option. I like the fact that we're dealing with younger people generally, trying to help them out. They move to these cities and they need a place to sort of start off and live. And I'd lived in HMOs in London and really enjoyed my time there. But generally, everything I'd lived in was terrible. So I just saw that opportunity of like, if this is done well, I feel like you've got a really good business model and you're providing a really good service. So I felt like it was a real sort of natural thing I was interested in, I wanted to pursue really. So I just went for it.
Yeah, and I know that you are quite passionate actually about the product that you create and actually creating a good environment and community for your tenants in your houses as well. And you put a lot of time and effort into doing that. So it's a huge change in, I suppose, in direction for you. You're in London and you've got this contractor based career in stunts, and then you're also building this HMO portfolio in Liverpool, 200 something miles away. And I know that this has been really challenging at times, and I want to talk about some of that stuff. The first thing I want to do though is talk about how you've managed to go from just getting started with that buy to let to the fifth HMO, because the assumption is always that you've got the capital at hand, or you've had some properties just sort of handed to you. But what's the reality here, Johnny? How has this materialised? Because I know it hasn't been easy, and it's been moving lots of parts around, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was slow to start with, really. I had listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot online, and I was really keen to invest in the Northwest, just because I wanted that. I knew that I felt like there'd be more capital growth there than in London, where I'd bought my home and felt like prices were really heady. Um, so I spent a lot of free time going up there, sort of walking the streets, getting to know people, and trying to get to know where to invest. And for a long time, I felt like I was just hitting a brick wall in the sense of I just wasn't getting anywhere, and I couldn't. I just couldn't find the strategy or the place for me to invest. And then it was actually a forum which I got chatting to someone on, and he offered me a bit of his time, and we spoke, and he was investing in student HMOs in Liverpool, and he was just really helpful. He gave me lots of advice and time, and he really encouraged me to do it and to take that leap of faith. But to build up from sort of one HMO to five, and to do it quickly is challenging, and you need support from other people, a good contractor, things like that, and also we needed finance to do that. So I really feel like so far this journey has been all about relationships with people, like completely, and that's how we've managed to do what we've done so far, is just completely based upon those relationships that we've built with people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Johnny. Everything from refurbs to actually getting your hands on good deals, to getting good finance in place, borrowing money from private investors, all of that stuff is about other people, isn't it? And before we kicked off today, we chatted about a few things just before we hit record, didn't we? We talked about the main challenges that you've kind of faced so far, and I think we said there was the challenge posed by the distance. You're in London and these properties are in Liverpool, good 500-mile round trip. We talked about finance and the challenges of recycling capital through deals and raising finance and, and trying to kind of just make money appear to buy deals.
Yeah.
Sometimes it wasn't quite there. And we also talked about time, because it's been a tough year for you, hasn't it, in your industry? You've been largely not able to get on sets, and then all of a sudden you've had work and you've been really busy. So I want to talk about those a little bit more. First of all, Johnny, can we talk about distance? Because I think there's so much relevance here to our audience. You've done what a lot of people based around London and the South Counties often find they need to do when they start stacking deals up, because the yields just aren't available in the South. And so you've gone north, you've found some well-priced properties, you've managed to get strong yields out of them. But there's a compromise there, isn't there, that we've talked about. How have you found that? And, just how challenging has that been at times? Or perhaps it hasn't been as that challenging.
No, I think it does sort of promote a lot of challenges, and it ebbs and flows in terms of the intensity as well. So it is difficult. If I get a phone call from a tenant in the middle of the night, I can't just nip round there and sort out the fire alarm if it's going off in the middle of the night or whatever. I have to be reliant on other people, and so my business is all built on trust and relationships with those people, that they've got my back when I'm not around. So I mean, it's just so vitally important that you sort of create a team of people that are on the same trajectory as you and want the same things as you, and moving forward, like that's the only way we're going to grow and scale, really, is to have those solid relationships. And I think that's really something that I had learned from my professional day job was, it's all about good relationships with people. And when you do something that's incredibly dangerous for a day job, you're so dependent on other people and the team around you, it's all about that relationship you have with that person that's maybe putting you out if you're on fire, as you sort of mentioned before. And it's kind of similar in a way with property. Our main contractor, Kevin, like he's just brilliant, and there's never a problem. Nothing's ever a problem. And but that's reciprocated in the fact, we try to look after him as much as we can and be as clear and honest about everything that's going on in our business as we can, really.
Yeah, and did you say earlier, Johnny, that before you actually jumped in and actually invested in Liverpool, you would go up and you'd spend time on the ground actually getting to know the streets and what was happening, at ground level?
Yeah, months and hours, Andy, of just, going up there and viewing properties and meeting estate agents, and bizarre, quite often you'd meet other investors on the way because they would be viewing the same properties as you, and just hitting all these dead ends. But just being on the ground and getting to know the city that I had targeted, I looked at a lots of sort of cities in the northwest, and I just very quickly decided Liverpool, and then that was it. I had to get to know Liverpool in order to do it, and the only way to do that was to get up there and get involved and be part of that city, really.
I think it's so great to hear you say that, Jonny, because I think you've done what you had to do to find those yields and to make this strategy work. But it's a huge decision, and of course, you could have gone to several other cities, and some of them would have worked well, I'm sure. But I don't think everybody realizes just how important it is to get on the ground and really understand where it is you're investing. I think one of the questions I see asked quite a lot in the HMO community, and then I get messages about directly, is where's a good place to invest? And it's an impossible question to answer. There are places in the country that yield better than others. There are places in the country that perform better in terms of capital values. But it all depends on what you want as well. What sort of a portfolio you want to build. You clearly wanted to build a student portfolio for obvious reasons, and listeners of the HMO podcast will know why my preference is students as well. But it's so important, isn't it, to get down, get on the ground, and even in places like Liverpool, a huge city, we know there's a massive population of young people there, but particularly in the student industry, the student market, there are some streets and some areas that just simply don't work. You really have to know exactly where people want to live and what good value for money represents there, and what the achievable rents are, and what the competition is, and what the standards are. And more recently, the Article 4 direction has come in, hasn't it, Jonny? And that's a new challenge. But for some people just getting in, that's something that you've got to be aware of as well. So it's great to hear you say that on the podcast. And I really hope anybody listening who's thinking about investing in another part of the country really takes that on board and spends time to really understand where they're going to invest. Let's talk about finance then, because this has been this has been one of the big things that we've focused on. In fact, I think this was a bit of a block for you for a while, wasn't it, Jonny? I think the idea that you couldn't really expand your portfolio beyond a certain level if certain HMOs weren't revalued where you wanted them to, and actually you've done a number of things and kind of found a solution to this to some extent, haven't you? So, how challenging has that been, and what have you done to combat it?
Yeah, massively challenging. I think it's the hardest thing to sort of, encourage people to part with money and invest it in you and your business.
Well, you say that, Jonny, but I vividly remember a call when I was out with the dog, and I think it was literally the day after our call about this, and you called me the following day, and actually, all of a sudden you kind of had an opportunity. But I think for you, there was definitely a big mindset piece. You didn't necessarily think that people would be interested or willing to lend to you. Do you think, is that fair to say, Jonny?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like private finance came to people that had a portfolio of hundreds of properties, and that was the only way, you could raise it, because you're a big established brand company, and that's what people invest in. But what I actually realized was people are just interested in our story and want to invest in us. And if we can come across in a professional manner and show what we're doing is working and works well, then I think they'll part with the money.
Yeah, I think that's another bomb you've just dropped, Jonny. I couldn't agree more. It's back to that people thing, isn't it? People invest in people, and as soon as you started talking to, I think even you talked to people at work, and you just mentioned what you were doing, and then there were some friends and family, and all of a sudden there were several people who were really quite happy and interested to invest, and you're now in a position where you've certainly got enough to keep you going, haven't you?
Yeah.
And the question is, can we use this effectively enough without impacting too much on the other challenge that I know you've faced, and that's time.
Yeah.
So you had this period where you were really quiet, couldn't get on sets for obvious reasons, and then all of a sudden you're back and it's pretty full on. And at this time of the year, so we're recording this in June, you've got a student changeover coming up, so you're busy with that. You've also got projects, big projects that's being refurbished at the minute and things like that, haven't you? You've got the next refurb lined up. So time has been a big challenge for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, doing contractual work, it ebbs and flows, so it's all or nothing. And when it's on, it's really on. So you know, trying to manage 210 miles away from home, a project or a changeover is challenging. But it all comes back to that team and those people that I trust, and they have to do things for me. They have to meet tenants. They have to show tenants around houses for me, and they have
Yeah.
to be polite and professional for me, and I have to fully trust them. So it's challenging because some days I just can't even get onto the phone,
Mm.
and I'm completely dependent on others. But then I can have quiet spells where I can really knuckle down and focus on stuff. And I can go and meet an investor. I can go up and meet tenants and check on a house or a project or whatever. So I'm lucky I have those quieter periods where I can get up there and do stuff. But
Mm.
it still quite often means I might go on a Sunday, or I might go, or I have to miss out on holidays and things like that, and just
Mm.
prioritize things really.
And are those sacrifices, have they been worthwhile, or are we? Does that question still remain unanswered?
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
No, I feel like we're getting there now. I feel like we're sort of getting on a bit more momentum behind us, and we're
Hmm.
starting to see some results really. And we're getting,
Yeah.
and I think that's come through getting better at what we do, having better systems, knowing what we're doing. The
Yeah.
refurbs are becoming a little bit more, I understand the process of what we're doing, and
Hmm.
that helps. And I understand I'm getting better at dealing with tenants, self-managing from a long distance. You've kind of got to learn your craft as a landlord, I think, and I've drawn a lot of experience from like yourself on that, and it's challenging to deal with that, but it's all part of the process and building this business really. And actually, when you sit back and reflect, it's actually quite fun. I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot, don't we? It's so important to enjoy it, because if you're not enjoying it, it's just not worth it. It's hard work. That doesn't mean we have to enjoy absolutely everything. Of course, you don't enjoy dealing with difficult tenants, or when refurbs don't go to plan. But the whole process of putting deals together, and creating good homes, and building a profitable business, we've got to enjoy that, and I think we've got to be passionate about the process as much as we have the results as well. And it's great. And I know from talking to you, you are, and I know there's times when you can get frustrated, and we all do, and we question what we've done and the decisions. But that's business, and it definitely is the HMO business, because it's very mechanical. There's lots of moving parts, and sometimes those parts don't work in the way that we want them to, and we need to oil them, and we need to change some of the parts. And
Mm.
it's been great working with you, and doing all of that, and we've made so much progress in the last year on all of that. And now your focus is less on finding deals and finance, and we're really working through the tenant bit, aren't we? Getting tenants onboarded, and building good relationships with tenants, systems to collect rent and chase rent, tenancy agreements, that sort of thing is where a lot of your focus is at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was a bit naive, I think, coming into my first couple of HMOs. For some reason, I thought it'd be a fairly straightforward sort of system, but actually, it's incredibly challenging, and you've got to have your structure and your system and your process in place to do that, to answer the maintenance calls, to collect the rent, and to make sure you've reached all the sort of safety and compliance standards that are
Mm.
asked of you. And that is the challenge with HMOs. But I think, as you sort of mentioned there, that can kind of be the enjoyment of it. Is building this from the ground up, from everything from the basics of the refurb project all the way through to a successful HMO that you've got tenants in there that love the house and look after it and respect it, and you get this, you build a business off of those bits really. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about one of your projects. This case study's in the HMO roadmap, and it's a brilliant case study. And um, before we hit record, you were questioning whether we've got another deal that's going through at the minute, which we're hoping is going to perform better than this one. Now, this is a great deal. This is exactly the sort of stuff that I buy. And you pointed out that the return at the back end wasn't as good as you wanted, or perhaps thought it should be, to maybe discuss on the podcast. And I actually said, look, this is a great deal. This is exactly, where these deals should be, and it's the reality of the majority of deals in prime HMO market, so particularly the prime student market. This project, Jonny, you bought it for 160,000, didn't you? And you did a pretty big refurb. Do you remember? I think the refurb was what, sort of over 100 grand, wasn't it?
Yeah, 107,000. I think we came in. It's 107,200. Yeah.
Yeah. So a full refurb, back to brick, absolutely everything. And how many rooms, and was it en suite?
Yeah. So we went into the basement and the loft, and we created 5 bedrooms, all with en suites, all really large rooms as well, actually, and a big open plan sort of living kitchen space.
Yeah, it's quite a big property, actually, isn't it? It's really quite vast.
Yeah, it's huge, actually. Yeah, I think it's about 185 meters squared or something like that. It's a big old property.
Yeah, I mean, so just at a glance, I really like to apply pound per square foot values to properties, and if it's it's that sort of size and you picked it up for 160,000, immediately it looks to me like you bought something in a prime area at a real snip at a good value. How did you buy it, and did it have any problems? Why was it only 160,000?
It was on actually at 185,000, and I found it on Rightmove. I literally, the day I found it, I sent I went up there myself the next day. I got on the train and went to see it, actually. And there and then, I drove away from the property and just rang up the agent and put an offer in of the asking price of 185. And then actually, when the surveyor came to look at it, it got down valued to 160. And that's how we settled on that price.
And so, so literally the surveyor decided it wasn't worth that, and then you just communicated that back to the seller, and they just said, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they may have been down valued to the 150, and I think I made it up to the 160, actually, thinking about it, Andy. But yeah, well, there was a bit of negotiation in there and back and forward. But I think what happened was there'd been quite a long time period between the offer being accepted and getting the lender's surveyor in there. And at that point, I think they just didn't want to start the whole process again. So I was kind of in the driving seat of that.
I think there's another really good point there, that this market that we're currently in is moving very, very fast. When was this, Jonny, that you bought this one?
So we bought this in 2019.
Okay, yeah. So this wasn't, we're not talking years ago. This is relatively recent that we bought this. Yeah. And particularly at the minute, prices are moving very quickly. And what I've seen, and I've said this to quite a few people, is that I'm seeing agents and sellers ask for one thing, and I'm seeing valuers come and say something else. And what's happening is, while a lot of properties are being taken off the market very quickly, they're getting lots of viewings, they're getting lots of offers, they're getting offers over and above, and they're being withdrawn from the market for that reason. A portion of those are coming back onto the market because they're falling through. Either they're getting down valued a bit further down the line, or people actually realise they were probably a little bit bullish, and stacking the numbers and maybe underestimated exactly what the refurb might be, and then have had second thoughts and it's gone back to the market. And I'm seeing that happen quite a bit at the minute. So I think for anyone who's looking at deals and thinking it's just impossible, I would still recommend you have a punt. Offer what you think it's worth, offer at a level that you can make it work, and you might get outbid, you might not get it, but there's always the chance that it might come back to you. And if you were the next closest offer, or you're still in a good position when it comes back around, that could put you in the driving seat. So I think that's an important point to make. But let's talk about the reval then, because this is the bit that you kind of got stuck on a little bit. Where did you want this to get revaled, or where did you think it was going to get revaled?
I was hoping it would be around the 300 mark, or 275 to 300 was my kind of.
And was
number.
That based on something you'd already seen or something you'd read?
I'm in contact with a few sort of investors in the area, and they were reaching that sort of number.
Mm,
So I was fairly confident, and I was looking at the standard of their property, and I was thinking, mine's a
mm.
lot nicer than that. And I feel like, you know, and I know it's going to rent. I had the AST in place, so I was really confident I could get that number really.
Yeah. And where did the reval come out?
250.
250.
Gutted.
So 25 to 50 under where you wanted it to be. And actually, at the back end of a deal, it's quite a large amount, as a proportion of that value. I think an important point to make here is that this was right kind of at the peak of the pandemic, wasn't it, Johnny?
Yeah.
wasn't the best time to have to get a property refinanced and valued.
No, it was the middle of summer last year. I met the surveyor there, and I do remember very clearly in the notes back from the survey a whole clause regarding the global pandemic at the time,
Yeah.
and a reason for downvaluing the property. So yeah, it was kind of out of my hands really.
It's funny, isn't it? Because there's a very good chance now that you'd comfortably achieve that sort of value. That I think the confidence has certainly regained since then, and actually the market itself has just moved quite a bit since then, particularly the investment market as well. So I look at the property and what's going on and think you've got a huge amount of equity stored up in that deal that at some point you'll be able to realise, which is in itself great. But what did this mean at the back end in terms of the numbers? Because I think it was the ROI that you really were hoping would be a bit higher as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think we ended up with a 16% ROI and a yield of about 11%, a gross yield of about 11%. And I was just pretty. I think I'd listened to a lot of sort of podcasts of people explaining their deals, and their numbers were just so much greater than this. So I was just a little bit gutted really about that.
Yeah, 2,400 a month is what the gross rent is on this property.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at this deal and think that looks something like a 16% ROI or return on capital employed, a 6% net yield, and after your interest costs and things like that, well over £1,000, sort of £1,100-1,200 a month net.
Yeah, exactly.
This for me in a prime area is a phenomenal deal. It's an A1 product in an A1 location, and I think that this is a really, really, really great deal. And I think this highlights the expectations that a lot of people have got that perhaps could be adjusted a little bit. Of course, 25, 30, 40% return on investment's great, but it's tough to achieve for lots of different reasons that we talk about on the show regularly. Sometimes it's because those end values just aren't there. Sometimes it's because it's tough to buy properties at the right price. Sometimes you just simply can't find the opportunity to add value, and particularly in areas where there's an Article 4 direction. And I suspect that in your case, with the Article 4 direction coming into Liverpool, you'll probably find that more so in the future, that it does become more challenging to genuinely add value. We find it really tough unless you can actually find ways of adding space. It can be quite tough, but even then, within the Article 4 directions, savvy landlords know that their property with Article 4 compliance is in limited availability, and they often build in the potential value of things like loft conversions and side extensions and rear extensions, or making an extra bedroom into the asking prices, which makes it tough for investors like you and I. But I think the key thing here is that you've got a deal that on a cash flow level works incredibly well. You've probably now got more equity stored up in it that you might be able to release at some point in the future. And you've managed to navigate around the potential issue of that down valuation by tackling things like raising private finance and being more creative with methods of finance and developing relationships. And you've got another deal that's already secured and stuff like that now, haven't you, Johnny, in Liverpool? That's all as a consequence of being immersed in what you're doing, being completely involved, controlling as much of it as you possibly can. Would you do anything different though, Johnny? Looking back at the deal, would you do anything different with this now?
Well, it's funny you say that actually, Andy, because the current project we're doing is a house with identical footprint. We're just finishing this one off, and we've changed this one into a six-bedroom house, which
Hmm.
so potentially, hopefully we'll get a bit more value for this. But actually, it means you're reducing the size of the bedrooms within this property. So would I do anything different? I'm really proud of that house. I don't think I would change anything. And I think the important thing I've taken away from it is I think coming into it as a bit of a novice, uh, having very big expectations around revalues and what I could get, and then speaking to more experienced people like yourself, and actually you saying, this is a good deal, and with the way you're trying to build this business and thinking long term, you know, you've done well here, and like you just got to move on and build from that. So I don't
Mm.
think I would change. I don't think I'd change anything because it was a brilliant experience just to do it and to make the mistakes I did here and there, and to have that down valuation sort of keeps your feet on the ground and stuff like that. And I just think moving forward, if we on the next one get a great valuation, then it will probably taste even sweeter, won't it? Really?
I'm sure it will be, and I think you should be really proud of this deal and actually the portfolio that you've built. And I think to give this a bit of context as well, this deal and this project that you did, and getting all of that filled, and then securing the next one and getting the finance in place, as all coincides with two other HMOs where you've got the consideration of doing some upgrade work to those, and whether or not you get tenants in now or leave it vacant for a short period and do a refurb, and the collision of all of this happening at once is the reality of building a business, isn't it? And this is the big juggle, the dance that you've been doing in the last 18 months. And looking ahead, I think the reality is it's probably going to continue for a period of time, isn't it, Johnny? I think you're a year or so away at least of of everything just kind of being where you want it in the currently in your portfolio, and it just working. But what is next, and what's the longer term objective here? Then I know it was sort of to have that replace that income, but I know you like to surf, you like to get out to the mountains, you love to travel.
Yeah.
Talked about having a family and things like that. Where does this all go? Where does it end? Does it end?
So does it end? Yeah, good question. I think when I set out, Andy, I really wanted to get when I started HMOs, I really had this focus that I wanted to get really good at doing them. And when I say good, I mean in terms of I've got a really clear structure and plan that works, almost like a cookie cutter effect of like I
Mm,
know how to make 5 6 bedroom HMOs in Liverpool in this area, and I can do it
mm,
really well. And that way, it will become just second nature to do. And that's the kind of still the objective. And I feel at the moment I'm still learning bits here and there. We're not quite there, but hopefully, as you say, in a year's time, we'll have this strategy sort of sewn up, and I will continue to repeat it. I feel I enjoy doing it, so I'm not going to change that. But longer term, I'm hoping I can have a bit more time freedom. Is really, I think that's what a lot of us, you know, enter into this for really, and hopefully I can go and spend a bit more time by the coast and go surfing and go
mm,
snowboarding and think all those things I sort of enjoy really, and do it with a hopefully a family and things like that, and not be so dependent on the day job and having to be um, at a studio at a certain time, and forever in work really, just trying to strike a
mm.
bit more of a balance, I feel. And I'm hoping that HMOs can really enable this to happen for not just me, but for my partner as well, and for my hopefully for my future family.
Mm. And you said you kind of almost summarised your strategy there, John. It was 5 and 6 bed HMOs, specifically for students in this one particular area of Liverpool, and for me that's a key part of the success behind what you've already done, and undoubtedly will be the pillar to kind of ongoing success here, and it's that commitment to being so involved and immersed in that real niche there. So you build those contacts and you build those relationships, and you understand everything that you need to do. You don't spread yourself too thin from a time point of view, and for me that's focus. It's critical, and I think if there was just one thing that people took away from this, what I think has been a great episode with you today, but if there was just one thing that people took away from this, it would be that focus. Take some time to decide and determine what it is that you want to invest in. Professional HMOs, student HMOs, large HMOs, small HMOs. Take time to pick the location and take time to really evaluate how you're going to do it in terms of funding strategy and fundraising objectives, and getting those pieces in place, and then execute on it and stay focused on that, because it's so much easier when you do that. And then what we often find is results begin to compound. The efforts of doing all of this and focusing it on one target begin to compound much more quickly than they would do if we were looking in several different directions all at the same time, which is a real challenge. Jonny, for anybody who's maybe at an earlier stage and wants to emulate what you've done to get to that 4 or 5 property mark, maybe more, but they're right at the beginning, what advice would you give them, or what advice would you give yourself at that point?
I think I would seek out people to sort of mentor and emulate. I don't think what we're trying to do here is reinvent anything, reinvent the wheel type thing. We really are doing something that has been proven for a long time. So I think you're best to seek people for advice, build those relationships with people, and then the business will build itself from there if you've got those solid foundations of those relationships. And as you say, I think especially being a big distance, if you're going to do it from a distance, I think having a focus on one very specific strategy is much easier than sort of hopping between. And there's a lot out there that's exciting to do, but if you just keep that focus, I think you'll achieve what you set out to do, really.
Yeah, great. I think that's great advice. Jonny, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people listening in today who maybe need a stunt performer or might be interested in investing with you or catching up about Liverpool, whatever it is. Is there, a way to contact you? Where can people do that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm newly joining social media onto Instagram as
this is one of the things our outstanding objectives.
It certainly is. Yeah,
working together.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, I think that's important to mention. Jonny, you've done this without a social network at all. So there's a good chance that this will be the first time that a lot of our listeners learn about you. But there are ways of raising finance and building contacts and networks that exist offline, and you're a great example of that. But yeah, I just wanted to pause very quickly on that point. But sorry, Jonny, you were saying.
No, yeah, I suppose I'm a bit old-fashioned in that sense that I've kind of built those relationships without sort of modern technology and just chatting to people and things like that. But I am going to venture into the world of social media. So we're going to be Crockwell Properties, which is our business name. You can find us there on Instagram. And I can email me at jonny@crockwellproperties.co.uk. And that's us, really.
Awesome. Jonny, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I knew it'd be a load of fun. We're good friends, and I'm really proud of what you've done and achieved so far. And I have no doubt that you're going to continue to do some really incredible stuff, because I know how committed you are, and you really value and where you need to place your efforts to do this, and it's great to see you doing that so consistently and so well now. But I just want to say a big thank you for coming and sharing your story on the HMO podcast and sharing lots of great tips and tricks and pieces of advice that you've kind of learned along the way.
No, thanks, Andy. It's been great to have the opportunity to sort of speak to your listeners and have this conversation with yourself, and hopefully you can do it again one day. Be great.
I'm sure we will. We'll get you back for a round 2, maybe after you get this next deal tied up and refurbed.
Okay.
And we'll compare the the numbers on that one to the numbers on the
Yes,
one that we
please.
discussed on the podcast today. All right, Jonny, thank you so much again, Jonny, for coming on the podcast.
Cheers, Andy.